for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, on fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, on fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K,
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K,
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, on fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K,
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, on fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K,
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Good Friday evening, everyone. I am your host, Matt Ohayon, as per usual, the Hebrew Hammer on Friday nights. Let's just get right into it. The Sick Podcast brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They have been named by the Financial Times as one of America's fastest growing companies in 2023 and have been recognized by the Globe and Mail as a top growing Canadian company for 2 years in a row. They work with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies, providing end-to-end logistics services. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. We're also brought to you by Playground, your premier gaming destination, open 24/7. Drinks are always free when you play. Over 600 machines, poker tournaments, cash games, daily promotions, free valet, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. Playground. Also brought to you by La Bittt Tibi, brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. And by Murphy Clinic. They are an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal, as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal's Shop Angus, and the second one on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening very soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. All right. You may be noticing I'm wearing a Bengals sweater. Just very quickly, that's because I almost wasn't going to be hosting this podcast because I almost spent the past 36 hours in bed because yesterday you may have heard that Joe Burrow went down in practice. It's okay, though. It's just a strained calf. It's okay. It's just a strained calf. We're going to be okay. I said on Twitter that this team, they dictate my mental health from the months of basically September to February. I can't handle the season being over in July. I can almost handle it being over in January. I handled it very poorly last year when they got eliminated to the Chiefs. I don't know what I would be able to, what I would do for 6 months of the year if the season was over in July, but that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get into it. Our guest today, not a lot of news going on with the Montreal Canadiens, but we could always talk Habs. I mean, hey, this team is 24/7. So with me today is Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette. Stu, how are you?
I'm doing well, 24/7, 12 months a year with the Habs. People can never get enough.
Well, that's it, right? So you know what? I want to start with a football kind of comparison because yesterday was kind of an interesting day in the news cycle, except for forget even about the Joe Burrow thing. But, you know, Sean Payton is the new head coach of the Denver Broncos, and he had an interview with USA Today, basically saying that last year was, I mean, he's right, was one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL for the being done by the Denver Broncos, whose head coach was Nathaniel Hackett, who is now the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. Is everyone following? Okay, good. So where I was thinking is because, you know, the NFL season is still about 2 months away. I know it's training camp right now, but this is really a league that is 24/7. Forget that the Habs are 24/7, but the NHL kind of sort of not. have you ever seen something like that in the NHL? And before we talk about what the NHL could do to become maybe a 24/7 league, but have you ever seen something like this?
I can't think of any sport where a coach has come in and basically just dumped all over the coach who replaced him. What a horrible job he did. But I mean, I think the thinking behind it is he wants to get the confidence of his quarterback, Russell Wilson, who was horrible last season. So now they just put all the blame on the old coach. And that will take a lot of pressure off of Russell Wilson in training camp. I'm sure he'll be asked about it. I imagine he already has been. But I imagine that's a strategy behind it. But it's rare to hear a coach say something like that about another coach from the coaching brotherhood, and that's sort of what it is in the NFL and in the NHL also. These guys all know each other. So that was surprising, but I can understand the thinking behind why he would do it, because he's trying to take all the blame off of his quarterback and get Russell Wilson back in shape this season. You were talking about Joe Burrow. I mean, if the Bengals lost Joe Burrow, they're done, and the Broncos are stuck with Russell Wilson, for lack of a better word, right now, and they need him to play a lot better if they're going to do anything. So that's a bit of a mental game. I think they're trying to give some confidence to Russell Wilson.
Because to me, I mean, I also, and I couldn't think of one, but the closest thing I thought of, obviously having a Habs memory bank, was back. It was still in the playoffs though. Like, it wasn't in training camp before the season started, but it was in the playoffs when I think it was Rafael Diaz sent the suicide pass to Lars Eller, and then Eric Greiba cracks him from the blind side, and then you see the two teams going at it, with Michel Therrien, it's a lack of respect. And then, they had Paul McLean saying, player 61. He didn't even say the name of the player. It was just, that's the only time I could really think of coaches really going at it. But yeah, it's something that just doesn't happen.
It's rare for players to even do something like that. I mean, I remember back in the playoffs when Dominic Ducharme had COVID and Luke Richardson replaced him, and Ben Sherratt, said all the players on this team would skate through a wall for Luke Richardson. He didn't say anything negative against Dominic Ducharme, but nobody ever said that about Dominic Ducharme. So I think that was sort of a message just how much the players liked playing for Luke Richardson and maybe how much they didn't with Dominic Ducharme. But again, to hear a coach say that about another coach is really surprising.
So next item on the docket for NFL NHL comparison was earlier in the offseason, everyone's talking about where's Aaron Rodgers going? Where's he going? Where's he going? Where's he going? And then he finally ends up in New York, and he's all the lights are on him right now, and he's getting constant press. Again, trying to think how the NHL could have built a storyline about a player this way, and it's kind of radio silence on his front right now. Patrick Kane, this guy is one of, if not the best American players of all time. He's on the market right now, 34 years old. I get it. He's on the he's getting to the wrong side of 30, but he's 2 years removed or a year removed from a 90-point season, and it's kind of, we're not really hearing, where's he going? Where's the Patrick Kane sweepstakes? I don't know. Why do you think that is?
Well, he looked like he was done in Chicago. And then after the trade deadline, he had a little bit of a spark, and then he looked like he was done again. I remember when they played in Montreal after the trade, and he didn't look great in that game either. And I think it's a case, some guys get old really quick. Some guys, it's not like from one season to the next, they get old. And for Canadian fans, Scott Gomez is an example of that. I mean, Scott Gomez was a good player before he came to Montreal, and then he got here, and all of a sudden he got old fast. That move to the outside where he used to be able to beat the defenseman, he couldn't beat him anymore, and it became so predictable, and it was hard to watch. And I think just some guys age slowly, and some guys it just hits like all of a sudden. They get old, like just from one season to the next, they're old. And I think that might be the case with Kane, that he just whatever, whether it's losing that little step or losing a little bit of the desire, whatever it is, I think some guys get old fast, and I think that's what's happening with him.
I mean, I guess my rebuttal to that would be Joe Pavelski, right? Joe Pavelski, I feel like he had a couple of years ago, before he went to Dallas, he had like a really tough season in San Jose. And probably that was the beginning of the downfall of the Sharks, where they decided to rebuild. And then, he leaves, goes to Dallas, and then, starts lighting it up again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like when there's it's the same thing kind of with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, last season was horrible for him. I don't think he's thrown a 300-yard passing game in 22 games, yet everyone's still talking about him because he's 2 years removed from an MVP. Again, Patrick Kane's 2 years removed, or a year removed, depending on how you look at it, from a 90-point season. I don't know. I feel like there's still something there. He's one of the best players of all time. You can't really just count that out.
You have to think there's teams that have shown interest, like with Jonathan Drouin for $800,000 or whatever it was he was getting, and maybe Patrick Kane is holding out, hoping he can get more money than that. Because you'd have to think, as you say, you'd think a team would take if Colorado's willing to take a chance on Jonathan Drouin for that kind of money, you think somebody would be willing to take a chance on Kane, but maybe Kane isn't ready to sign for that kind of money yet, and could be a case. I remember when PK Subban was, before he retired, he said he wanted to play. He was going to listen to offers, and if it wasn't somewhere he wanted to play and it wasn't the money that he thought it was worth, he would retire, and that's what he did. So I don't know. Patrick Kane might be in a similar situation right now, where if it's not somewhere he wants to play and it's not financially worth his while, maybe he'll just pack it in. So
the last thing I will say is, again, I know it's a 3-on-3 Quebec tournament, Quebec players tournament / players playing in Montreal, but why there's a 3-on-3 tournament going on over at Hockey Etc. over off the the Côte de Liesse highway, the 520, whatever you want to call it. Why haven't we heard anything about this? This is like, we're the hockey mecca, and like Nick Suzuki's playing in this 3-on-3 tournament. I don't know. I feel like we should be hearing a little bit more. I know it's like you can't take much from a 3-on-3 tournament, but I feel like this would be something that like Canadians fans are like seething over. Like they want it, they crave it. It's
there was seething over the 4-on-4 scrimmage at development camp, and people were critiquing players and breaking down their play in a 4-on-4 basically scrimmage at a development camp. So it's not surprising. I mean, anything, as I said, it's the appetite Canadians fans have is insatiable. They can't get enough. I mean, I know it's put on by one of the player agencies. I've been on vacation the last couple of weeks. I'm not even sure what kind of media access they have, or if they're allowing media even in there. I'm not. I don't know. I haven't seen anything in my email, although I haven't been looking that closely while I've been on vacation. But yeah, that's one of those things. I mean, if they put it on YouTube or showed it on their team website, I know they showed the 4-on-4 scrimmage. The Canadians showed it live on their Twitter account and on their page, and I'm sure a lot of people watched it. But I mean, it's basically, it's just guys getting together and through the agency, and guys getting to know each other and just skating. I mean, nobody's going hard. Nobody's doing anything serious in July or August. I mean, I saw a video on Twitter yesterday of Max Domi skating for the first time in his Leafs practice jersey. And that's all it is. He's just out for a skate. These guys, it's like beer league hockey at 10 o'clock in the winter for a bunch of old guys throwing the puck around. It's obviously a lot higher caliber, but it's just guys staying in shape, getting to know each other, throw the puck around a bit, skate, probably go have lunch afterwards, get to know players from the other teams a little bit. So it's not serious at all, but I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians fans and hockey fans that would take it seriously. As I said, I was sort of laughing with that. I was at the in-process watching that 4-on-4 scrimmage at the end of the development camp. It was fun to watch, and some guys were going a little harder than other guys, and some kids hadn't been on the ice for a couple of weeks before. They weren't in as good shape as other guys. So you got to factor all that in before you start analyzing or breaking down what's happening in a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4 summer event.
Well, we know as Twitter would love, like, can you just imagine how Twitter would explode if I only know that like Nick Suzuki and Caden Gooley are taking part in this, but can you imagine if like there was a Bruins defenseman taking part in this, and Nick Suzuki just walked him, like completely just like embarrassed him, like how crazy it would, like everyone would go on the internet. I mean, I feel like there would have been something there with you just want to keep, I know the interest will always be there, especially when things start to ramp up and the preseason rolls around, but I don't know, I feel like you want to hold your fan base for as long as you can.
Well, what was the Carey Price line after he had a rough preseason game? Was everybody chill? Or
everybody chill, yeah.
Everybody chill. It's like a preseason game. This is 3-on-3 scrimmage at the end of July. And again, these guys, I'm sure most of these guys take a few weeks off the ice, after the season's over. And this is guys, I think, just getting back on the ice now for most of these guys. I know with Domi, we tweeted about Domi yesterday, said it was his first time skating in a Leafs uniform. So, he went fairly far in the playoffs last season. So these guys get away from the ice for a while. And now they're just getting the skates back on, getting the feel of the puck a little bit. It's hard to believe we're just over a month away from the Canadians golf tournament and then training camp, and summer goes by too quick, man. My advice to hockey fans: enjoy the summer, enjoy the nice weather,
exactly.
Go outside, go for a walk, go for a swim, do something, and the hockey season lasts long enough as it is.
It's crazy. I can't believe I looked at my work calendar because I had to just check a couple things yesterday, and then I'm like, oh my God, it's already August 1st next week. What the hell's going on?
Oh, I know. But you're right. I mean, the interest of the NFL is similar. I mean, even more so, as you say, for fans like you, big NFL fans, it's 12-month-a-year thing, and people live and die with these teams. I mean, you're a Montreal guy cheering for the Cincinnati Bengals. I did a column a few years ago asking a bunch of different media people, because I always find it interesting how Montrealers are so into the NFL, and so many of them have a team like you do. And it's like, how did you become a fan? Like, Slavkovsky is a Cleveland Browns fan, because his dad was a Cleveland Browns fan.
Yeah.
And, I know Tony Marinaro is a Jets fan. I mean, how did you become a Bengals fan? I don't even know that story.
It's pretty simple.
That's not like a team. Well, you and Brendan Gallagher, that's not like a team like, I'm going to be a Bengals fan. Usually it's
right, exactly.
Jets or Giants or something like that.
So when I was a lot younger, I want to say between 7 and 10, all I'm getting on cable TV is, the only you could only watch channel 3, and it was CBS. So that's the only channel you could watch football on. So it was always the Patriots games. And again, I was just too young to understand. But one time I'm watching football. I think I was getting ready with my parents for a wedding in the family. I must have been 10 years old. And I'm watching just the Patriots beat the living piss out of the Bengals. I think it was 45-10. And then last second in the fourth quarter, Chad Johnson, before he became Ocho Cinco and then back to Johnson, catches a touchdown and does a crazy dance. Again, I didn't understand what was going on. They're getting the piss beaten out of them. And I'm just I like that guy. I like that team. So it's as simple as that, because it's funny because when they came to prominence, 2 years ago when they drafted Burrow, and then everyone started paying attention to them. And then, I'm in the media. So people start paying more attention to me and I get more of a following. Everyone's like, oh, you're a bandwagon. I took that so personally because I was I went through years of pain. Who picks the Bengals?
You and Brendan Gallagher.
Exactly. Very ill-advised decision to pick the Bengals. I had no idea what the pain I was in for, but hey, now I'm kind of in a good space. Again, like I said, I asked this question to a couple months ago when the playoffs were going on, who would it be tougher to be? The Toronto Maple Leafs fan base who haven't won a playoff round, or the Carolina Hurricanes who always make it to the Stanley Cup semifinals and then get the crap beaten out of them because they can't win a game in that round. I've kind of lived both because before 2 years ago, the Bengals hadn't won a playoff game in 30 years. And then they made it to the Super Bowl and then crushing loss. They had the lead in the fourth quarter. Last year, controversial call and then a last-second field goal sends the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Knowing what I know now for both, it's a lot more fun having the hope at the beginning of the season because you're going to win a couple playoff games. But the heartbreak, man, the heartbreak is so much tougher when you lose when you're so close. That's what I could say. But that's my story, basically.
I mentioned Leaf fans. When I was 4 years old, the last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup.
Oh my
I have a lot of friends who live in Toronto, and some are Leaf fans. Some hate the Leafs. The ex-Montrealers who moved to Toronto usually the ones who hate the Leafs. But I can't even imagine being a Leaf fan. And they're like, this year is going to be the year, though, right? This is the year,
right? Yeah,
it's the same story over and over and over and over again.
It's like my friends and I say, they are the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. Yeah. Expectations. It's always it's not even expectations in the fan base at this point. It's it's the media.
Well, the media spotlight
surrounding.
Exactly. I mean,
right?
there's no team in the NFL even now that gets more media exposure, I don't think, than the Cowboys. Maybe the Chiefs a bit, but. and Toronto. I mean, the Leafs get more attention in this country. That's for sure. It's not even close. But
well, that's it. And they always just fall short of expectations.
Yeah.
And it's always amazing when it happens. You love to see it.
They keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And with the new GM, they seem to be, well, apart from, getting Ryan Reeves, which I'm still sort of scratching my head about that one. But I guess they figure, I don't know how much tougher Ryan Reeves is going to make Goss and Matthews and the other core 4 guys in the playoffs, but I don't even know if Ryan Reeves will be in the lineup.
Well, that's it. That's one thing I didn't understand about that move. Let's talk about another rival of the Canadiens, because they were in the news cycle for obvious reasons earlier in the week. But Patrice Bergeron announced his retirement. Don't worry, Canadiens fans. We're going to bring this back to the Canadiens. But is he like? Definitely in my time, he's the best two-way center I've ever seen. You can make the argument that Anze Kopitar is up there. There's a lot of guys, and I could hear the arguments for everyone. There's no really wrong answer, but is it fair to say that, because I've been hearing, it might be hyperbole, you tell me, of all time, he's one of the best two-way centers. Would you agree with that?
It's hard. Just look at the trophies he's won as the best defensive forward. He's won a lot. You'd have to rank him right up there. I've always found it's hard to compare generations. I still will argue with anybody that Bobby Orr is the greatest hockey player who ever lived. But you watch a video from back when he played, and some of these defensemen he was going around could hardly pivot compared to now. So it's sort of hard to compare generation. For Bergeron, for people out there watching this, if you haven't read his retirement note already, it was on NHL.com. I highly recommend you do it. It's one of the classiest things I've ever read. It was just the way he thanked his family, he thanked the fans, he even thanked the media. It was a real class act. And it doesn't surprise me. I've interviewed him maybe 5 or 6 times over the years. And once or twice it was sort of one-on-one, and just so classy, like thoughtful answers, listening to questions, very polite, very well spoken. And that's what everybody says about him. He was just as good as he was on the ice. Off the ice, he seems to have been a great guy also. Kent Hughes was his agent up until he became GM of the Canadiens. And Kent Hughes also sent the note out congratulating him on the career and remembering when he was an 18-year-old French kid who went to Boston and hardly spoke any English, and what he went through there. And the other thing Ken Hughes said is he learned a lot from Patrice Bergeron also. And so it was nice to see him go out on his own terms. Excuse me. I know he was hurt in that game in Montreal, and people were wondering why he played. And apparently his dad was really ill, and his dad wanted him to see him play one more time at the Bell Center, and that's why he played in that sort of meaningless game, and he got hurt. But I always like to see when an athlete is able to go out on his own terms, and I'm sure it was a difficult decision for him. After the Bruins had such a great season and, were the favorites going into the playoffs, obviously won the Stanley Cup. But he's, from everything you read and everything you hear about him, he's a real family guy. Now he's going to have a chance to spend more time with his family. He thanked his wife in that note. She's sort of the rock behind him. And with these players, the wives are the ones who take care of the kids and the schooling and everything else. These guys are away a lot of time. Yes, they have a lot of money. Yes, they can have a lot of help, but it's still a lot falls on the wife. So I'm sure his kids are going to, as much as they're going to miss watching their father play, they're going to enjoy, I'm sure, having him around the house a lot more and being able to do a lot more things with him and being there for birthdays and Christmas and all that stuff. These guys are on the road a lot, but just a really class act on and off the ice. And I think to go back to your original question, I think he has to rank right up there as one of the top defensive forwards of all time. Bob Gainey, fans out there will give you an argument. Different positions. One's a winger, one's a center, a lot more defensive responsibilities for a center. But for Patrice Bergeron, just a class act on and off the ice. And, the Bruins-Habs rivalry, and Montreal fans hate the Bruins, but I don't think Montreal fans hate Patrice Bergeron. I think he's one of those guys that was able to, even if he didn't like the Bruins, you were able to respect Patrice Bergeron for the player he was.
Well, he was always one of those, for me, he was always one of those. He never got mixed up in the shenanigans. I remember there was a game where there was a line brawl against the Bruins. I think the game ended 8-5 for the Bruins, and Price and Tim Thomas got into a fight. Never got involved in that stuff. It was just always, he just is the poster boy for, I'm going to do my talking on the ice. I'm going to just compete my ass off, and that's how I'm going to beat you. And I feel like Canadiens fans, along with him being a gut Chenou, they just respected that so much, because I feel like there's hate and then there's envy. And I feel like even deep down Canadiens fans, they don't hate Brad Marchand. They envy him because he's the type of player. If he's on the Canadiens, you love him. If you're a Canadiens fan,
Bergeron never looked another player's face either.
Well, that too, but Bergeron, it was never even like a hatred through envy. It was just like.
No, and even if he wasn't a Quebec kid or a French kid, I think it would have been the same thing. Obviously, that adds to it, and Canes fans will say, why didn't the Canadiens draft him, and how he could have been a Hab and everything else. But then if he had been a Hab, would they have developed him the way he developed in Boston? The Canadiens didn't have a great reputation for developing players. They missed, obviously, a guy right in their own backyard. But again, just a real class act, and right to the end. Again, for fans who maybe haven't read it yet, go to NHL.com and read his retirement letter. It was really something special.
So the comparison I want to draw is obviously the one that's been following the captain of the Canadiens since he's been in the since he broke out with the Canadiens, is Nick Suzuki, because there's always so many comparisons between the two. Now, there's a long way to go for Nick Suzuki to really be a Patrice Bergeron. He's got to win a Stanley Cup. He's got to win like a million Selkies. But where does that begin? Like, where do you start really taking that comparison seriously? Like, when will Nick Suzuki start getting those Selkie considerations? Because it kind of feels like he's in a Phil Deneau range when he was with the Canadiens.
Yeah.
Like, he was the best kept secret as the best defensive forward that the Canadiens have had, and he never got any recognition for it. Like, what would it have taken for Phil Deneau and now Nick Suzuki to start getting that recognition on a year-by-year basis?
Well, two guys that are ahead of them. I mean, I think, I was talking about Bobby Orr before. Brad Park didn't win a Norris Trophy because Bobby Orr won them every year. If Bobby Orr wasn't there, he would have won a bunch of them. So it's sort of the guys that are ahead of you also. But I understand the comparisons between Bergeron and Suzuki. I wasn't around Bergeron often. I interviewed him, as I said, half a dozen times maybe. I'm around Suzuki basically on a daily basis during the season. And there's similarities, that calmness, that Suzuki's mature beyond his years on and off the ice. On the ice, he does everything right. Like, it's rare that you'll see Nick Suzuki make a bonehead play on the ice in the offensive zone or the defensive zone. Like Bergeron, he's a leader by example. The guys in the room, they talk about Nick doesn't speak a lot in the room. When he does, though, guys listen. It's more guys watch what he does, how he prepares. This guy hasn't missed a game since he came into the NHL. He's on the team that's been riddled with injuries. He hasn't missed a game the last 2 seasons, all 82 games. So there's similarities in that, and just the style of play. They both play a really smart game. Will Nick Suzuki ever win a Selke trophy? I don't know. If he doesn't, does that mean he wasn't a great two-way centerman? No, there's only one guy that wins that award every year. But I understand the comparison just because I think their personalities are very, very similar. You never heard anything bad happening with Bergeron off the ice. You never hear anything bad happening with Suzuki off the ice. He's still with his girlfriend from junior. They live together here. He's a quiet guy, thoughtful guy. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I've gotten to know Nick's mother a little bit when they were on the mother's trip. I was on the road with the Canadiens then. I had a chance to speak with her quite a bit. Super nice woman, very smart, very thoughtful. And so I've spoken with Nick's dad also, and the same thing. His dad's a dentist, has his own dentistry business. He's a really smart, confident young kid. And it's been cool for me sort of watching him. He's around the same age as my son. So many of these guys in the Canadiens are. And I remember the first time I interviewed him at a development camp, and he wasn't even in the main Canadiens locker room. He's in one of the other locker rooms in Brossard. And he sort of had that deer in the headlights look, like with all these cameras on him. He was sort of like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Now, he's still not the 100% comfortable with all the spotlight coming at him. But every year he gets a little bit better with it. And now, the last season, just seeing him mature, being able to watch him mature on and off the ice from the first time he came with the Canadiens has been sort of cool to watch. And it's going to continue going forward. I mean, he's going to keep getting a little better every year. And he's shown that already so far. So his ability to stay healthy, the leadership, the quiet leadership, the two-way game, a lot of comparisons there with him and Bergeron.
Yeah. And just to go back to your point about, he's getting more and more comfortable every year. I feel like last season was really helpful to him because I can't remember a time when, like, the Canadiens had basically a stress-free season. Like, there was no pressure whatsoever. As long as, you saw things from them, signs of promise, that's like such a low bar. And I don't think in my time there's ever been a season like that. And definitely in your time, because you were, again, like you always say, back when you were a kid, they're winning Stanley Cups left and right. They're missing place in their cabinet for all their, or they don't have enough space in their cabinets for all the Stanley Cups that they have.
Yeah, and the thing that impressed me the most about this team last year, well, one, they played an entertaining style of hockey. They were fun to watch. And two, they didn't give up. Like, this team had fight in it. There was maybe 1 or 2 games all year where they sort of, maybe the third period, they sort of packed it in a little bit. But it's very rare that happened at all last season. And that says a lot about the coaching staff. It says how much guys want to play for Mighty St. Louis. And I think it says a lot about Nick Suzuki also as a young leader in that locker room. I mean, it's a different locker room now without Carey Price and Shea Weber. You had the 2 veterans who dominated that room. Like, they were the guys. And now it's more spread out. You have Suzuki's the guy as a captain, but it's more it's much more of a brotherhood. A lot of the players called Shea Weber dad, and he was a father figure to a lot of the guys in that team. Suzuki's like the brother, like he's one of their brothers. And I think that's one of the things that Kent Hughes really wants to build with this team is a brotherhood and a bunch of guys around the same age that are going to grow up together on and off the ice. And Suzuki is the leader of that group. The guys, everybody in that room respects him. Like, it's when they talk about him, that's one of the words that always comes up is respect and leading by example. And that's, again, going back to Patrice Bergeron, that's what he did.
Just before we wrap up, I just wanted to, I mean, it's a little too early. The past 2 weeks, I've done way too early expectations or predictions for the offense and then the defense. But someone who I really want to zone in on is Nick Suzuki, because, there's, at what point, can you, obviously last year, I thought it was really impressive that he did what he did with the team that was around him, because it's a lot less of an individual sport, hockey is, than any other of the major sports. But, what are your expectations, points wise, play wise for Nick Suzuki going into this coming year?
Well, he had 26 goals last season, and he played a good chunk of the year without his regular line mate, Cole Caulfield, obviously. So you have to believe there's a possibility of him scoring 30 goals. It wouldn't shock me if he scored 30 goals. And I think the step for him this season was at 66 points, 67 points he had last season. I think this is the season where Caulfield stays healthy. They find a regular other line mate to play with him. I'd expect I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a point-a-game player this year with at least 82 points. And he's already shown he can stay healthy and playing. I mean, he played, I think, with every single guy on the team at one point last year on his line. I mean, it was crazy. It was nuts, the guys that he ended up playing with. So I think this is the year, if all goes well, I'd be surprised, actually, if he doesn't become at least a point-a-game player with 82 to 90 points.
I'll even go as far to say this, to bring it back to the original question. If he did become a point per game player, or just below that, anywhere between the range of 75 to point per game to more, I think he starts getting the recognition of of those comparisons between him and Patrice Bergeron. Like, I think that would solidify it, because Bergeron, I think the highest point total he ever got was some high 70s. I think he had 30 something goals and then 40 something assists one year. And I don't think he ever hit that point per game plateau. But I think if Nick Suzuki manages to do that, that would solidify him. And, people would start drawing those comparisons. And then they're going to say, to his benefit, maybe not. When's he going to get that ring? Because when he gets that ring, maybe then he'll start being really compared. When you get those arguments going, when it goes.
Yeah, and even with the ring, I'm not a big believer in that if you didn't win a Stanley Cup or a Super Bowl or an NBA championship, that you're not a great player. Because there's only one team. There's 32 teams in the league, and one team wins every year. So you can, Dan Marino, who won the NFL, never won a Super Bowl. I mean, he wasn't a great quarterback. But you look at, just looking at Suzuki here on Hockey DB. 13 goals his first season. Second season, he had 15 goals in only 56 games, and 21 goals, and then 26 goals. So as I said, 5-goal improvement last season. So another 5-goal improvement this season puts him over 30. There's not a ton of 30-goal scorers in the NHL, and there's not a ton of 30-goal scorers who are equally effective at both ends of the ice. So if you have a centerman, a young centerman who can score 30 goals and play 20 minutes a game and take key faceoffs and all that kind of stuff, be a leader in the room. He's a really valuable commodity, and that contract, Marc Bergeron gets a lot of criticism for stuff he did in the past and bad contracts he gave up, but that Nick Suzuki contract, I think in the end is going to look like a bargain. And it was sort of the start of, instead of rewarding older players like Brendan Gallagher with big money contracts, lock your young guys in and get them, like what Bergeron did with Suzuki, and now what Kent Hughes has done with Cole Caulfield, and lock them in their prime years, pay them for what you expect them to do rather than pay them for what they already did. And that's sort of where the Brendan Gallagher, and I love Brendan Gallagher, and he's earned every penny he's ever played with the Canadians, but that contract that Bergeron gave him was rewarding him for what he had done in the past, not looking ahead to what might happen in the future as he gets older. And both of them are smart deals, and I think both of them are going to turn out to look like bargains. Once the salary cap starts going up again, as is expected, Nick Suzuki's contract is going to look like a real good deal.
From your mouth to the hockey god's ears. Hey, I just want to congratulate you. We made it 35 minutes without talking about yesterday's breaking news, as Tony spent yesterday's episode talking about. But hey, let's just touch on it really quickly before we end off. I mean, Juraj Slafkovsky obviously didn't have a great rookie season. What's a successful season for Juraj Slafkovsky next year?
Well, I sort of laughed, and Tony laughed too, at that sort of breaking news thing where he says he's expecting to have a better season than his rookie season. Well, what would be breaking news is if he said, I don't expect to have a better, really, he expects to have a better season. Okay, that's good news. I'm glad he doesn't expect to have a worse season. I think for starters, obviously staying healthy. He only played 39 games last season. It'll be interesting to see how his knee injury. I know he said in that interview he did back home that his knee felt good even before he left Montreal, and he's been skating, he's been working out. 4 goals in 39 games last season. He's lost some weight from that story saying, which I think is a good thing. It's that he wasn't fat. He's just a big, strong kid. I mean, he's built like an NFL tight end. But dropping another 10 pounds, like to play in the NHL at 230 pounds that's a lot of weight to carry around. Losing the weight should make him a little bit quicker. I think the biggest problem he had last season, the game was just too fast for him. It was like things were just happening too quick, and he sort of looked like he couldn't figure everything out. He was, guys were on him too quick in the defensive zone. Guys were on him too quick in the offensive zone. He wasn't shooting when he should shoot. He's 18 years old. That's the thing. I mean, in hindsight, and I don't know why the Canes didn't send him to Laval. I don't know why they didn't send him to the World Juniors. I thought that would have been better for his development. Having said all that, what would be a good season for Juraj Slafkovsky? Staying healthy, and if he could score 15 goals, I mean, it's a big jump from 4. If he could score 15 goals, that would be, to me, a really good season for a 19-year-old kid, even whether he was a number 1 overall pick or not. But it's going to be interesting this season because now some of the other guys who were drafted after him are going to be playing. Logan Cooley signed. He's going to be playing in Arizona. Shane Wright will probably be playing in Seattle. So last year it was hard to compare what he was doing with other guys because they weren't playing regular in the NHL. But this is the season where there will be more pressure on him because if Logan Cooley starts lighting it up in Arizona or Shane Wright, plays really well in Seattle, there's going to be more pressure on Slafkovsky. So he handled it's easy to forget how young these kids are. I think for an 18-year-old, everything well in Montreal, the spotlight, everything else, dealing with the media. He had a good sense of humor. He was funny. He's a fun kid to be around. He's a nice kid to be around. I think it was probably an eye opener for him last season. I think you don't become the number 1 pick in the NHL or any sport without being a little bit cocky and without being confident in yourself and without knowing you're good. That's all good things. But then you get the NHL, and I think it was like, wow, like this is really fast. And also he was going from a big European rink to a smaller NHL rink. That's another huge adjustment for him. So just to see who his line mates are. He played really well with Monahan before he got hurt last season. I wonder how much that played into the Canes wanting to bring Monahan back to have a guy who could play with Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky said that Monahan was able to slow the game down for him. That's something Monahan is really able to do as a veteran. He's able to control the pace of the game when he's on the ice. So if he finds regular line mates, if he can stay healthy, if he plays with Monahan and Monahan can stay healthy and he has some stability, that's one of the things, with all the injuries last year, there was no stability on the lines. Like, guys were playing with everybody. You never had any, nobody had a 10-game stretch really where you were playing with the same 3 guys. And that includes Nick Suzuki. So I think for Slavkovsky, if everything works out well, if he stays healthy, he has 70 regular line mates, if he could score 15 goals, that would be a big season. From what I saw of him last season, I wouldn't expect him to do that, but he said he's been working a lot with Adam Nicholas, and Adam Nicholas is a brilliant hockey mind, and the guys really love working for him. So going into the season, I'd be an open mind with Slavkovsky. If he's lighter, that's a huge first step. It'll make him quicker. He's had that taste of the NHL. He got to watch a lot of games from the press box too when he was hurt. And I think that can really help. I know Jordan Harris spoke with me when he first got called up by the Kings after university, and Marty St. Louis played him 3 or 4 games. Then he made him watch a couple of games in the press box. Harris said he realized that there are times where you do have more time than you think you have. So maybe that's something Slavkovsky learned by watching so many games and by working with Adam Nicholas, is to know when you have a little bit more time and when you don't have a little bit more time, when you need to make that quick play and when you maybe have an extra second to think and make a thoughtful play. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does. I like Slavkovsky as a kid. He's a big, he's a big thoroughbred, right? He's a big kid. And I think he's surrounded by the right coaching staff here. Again, I think it would have been better for his development last year, at least if they had sent him to the World Juniors, like what Seattle did with Shane Wright. They didn't, but can't change that. But coming into training camp, I think there will be pressure on Slavkovsky to show that he's ready, that he's everything won't be new to him now, right? He came here last year, development camp, everything was new. The training camp was new. The teammates were new. Everything was new. It would be more of a comfortable feeling. I think I saw in that story also he plans to live by himself this year. It's not really, I think he was living by himself when he was 15 when he was playing before, which is hard to believe, but it's a maturity process, and I think he'll be a year older, a year more mature, a little bit lighter. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Well, much like Sean Monahan can slow down the pace of play for Juraj Slafkovsky, I'm going to ask you to slow down the pace of this summer flying by, because I don't want to blink. I don't want to blink, and then next month, like you said, it's the Canadians golf tournament. So
summer is too short in Montreal, and it goes by way too fast.
I know. Anyways, Stu, thank you very much. Don't blink, because next thing you know, it will be that Canadians golf tournament. And enjoy your weekend, and enjoy. I guess until the next time we get to speak.
All right, have a good weekend.
You too. All right, and thank you all for listening, and you all have a great weekend. I'm Matt Ohayon. We'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.